context did the video that was shown? You said that they showed a video about a man being beaten.
Yeah, so the idea was, as part of the sexual, you want to normalize everything as a sexual educator. This is the premise of the ASEC folks. So the idea is that they basically try to desensitize you so that if you're dealing with a client, this is the premise, you're dealing with a client that is involved in that type of relationship, you aren't shocked, and you've seen it all before. So that's the premise between the ASEC organization. And then, sorry, April, we didn't have a lot of time for you, but
you're good.
No, I have questions though.
So April's our next week. We can talk about local stuff if you want to come up, and I'll do my quick introduction. And then we can do Q&A at the end. Let's keep Q&A at the end if we can. We only have the meeting till 9. I want April to be able to finish. You want to do a quick intro, and then, sorry, I was going to introduce her, but we've got, and I'll go run the camera.
My name is April Montgomery. I did a lot of research on the curriculum because as you can see here in 2021 was when I ran for Board of Education, and that's when the MSDE approved the comprehensive sex curriculum, or the sex ed curriculum. So I watched all of that happen. I have 2 high schoolers and I have a kindergartner. And at this time, when I first started paying attention was in 2017. My daughter was in 7th grade and going through sex ed, and they had approved some more comprehensive health education in middle school in the 7th grade level by the time that she was there. And it was very detailed. What's happening now that's got a lot of parents concerned is the fact that the detailed curriculum is coming into the elementary schools. So that's where a lot of this is getting some parents really kind of uncomfortable because they don't think that it's appropriate. But what you can see with this timeline is just kind of the way that we got to the point that we are now. So we have, in 2007 is when Advocacy for Youth started, the Future of Sex Education Initiative. So this group that they started was specifically to start getting the more comprehensive sex education into schools. Advocates for Youth is a direct subset of Planned Parenthood. The person who started Advocates for Youth actually sat on a board at Planned Parenthood. They started Advocates for Youth to really concentrate on younger children and their sexuality and getting them the education that they thought that they needed. So they created this separate subset of Advocates for Youth to work specifically on getting the education and the academics about the LGBTQ, about gender identity and expression, about all the different aspects of sex for children, ages like 12 to high school levels, into the schools so that they can have that information, because Advocates for Youth believes that children are sexual beings and have a right to have their personal physical understanding of themselves and their own choices when it comes to their relationships. From there, in 2009, you have UNICEF and UNESCO published the International Guidelines on Sexual Education. We then move into the production of the National Sex Education Standards in 2012. So this group, FOSE, put these different categories together to be able to get this NSES into the schools. The reason that we're highlighting these different things, because I know you asked the question before, I just want to address it now. All of these different organizations that you see here, you can find on MSDE's website. They are quoted, they are used, okay? So that's why we follow this down, okay? Multiple LGBTQ organizations call to action for comprehensive sex education. In 2015, a lot of the LGBTQ groups knew that there were students that identified as gay, bisexual, lesbian, and so on. And they felt as though they were not seeing themselves in the curriculum. This has been kind of a common thread that we're seeing with not only LGBTQ, but also with race and other issues. We want to be able to see ourselves in the curriculum. There is research that does state that when these children see themselves not only in their academics, but also in their teachers, it helps them to learn, it helps them to feel connected, okay? So that's where a lot of this basically comes from. And I don't think that it started in a way that was going to end the way that it has, and has a lot of parents concerned, okay? They started with the best of intentions. You get into 2016, Advocates for Youth publishes the 3R Sex Ed curriculum. Again, they were connected with FOSE. They created this curriculum. What Advocates for Youth started doing was going district to district, talking to these schools, finding out what their state and county laws were, and then helping to create actual guidelines for their curriculum, which they did here in Maryland. They also did it in New Jersey and a lot of other states around the country. And it was all around that same time. FCPS adopted its policy 443 in 2017. This is when we started seeing more students. And by the way, in 2016 is when they started doing more of the comprehensive health education in middle school. So now we're seeing more kids that are coming out and feel a little bit safer, right, to say to their friends and to their teachers that they are gay, that they are bi, that they are trans. So now we need a policy to protect them. That policy came out and was approved. 2019, COMAR, which is our Code of Maryland, replaced the regulations for the Comprehensive Health Curriculum Framework. This is when they started implementing more of the gender affirming and more education on the different types of genders, different sexualities was put into actual Maryland law and was then told to each county that they needed to start working on a curriculum. So they had a framework made, and that was in 2020. The MSDE updates the Comprehensive Health Curriculum Framework. In 2020, it was then stated by the MSDE that each county in Maryland needed to adopt this framework. Now, the framework is not a curriculum. The framework is something that curriculum is based on. So there's benchmarks, there's things that the schools need to hit, okay? So they do have stuff in there about gender identity. They do have stuff in there about sexual orientation. They do have things in there, and these things build each year by year. It builds. And that is the way that schooling works, right? You will first learn your ABCs, then you learn how to make words, then you learn how to read sentences. It's the same thing with gender identity, and the only reason I'm concentrating on that is because that seems to be that big ticket item that a lot of parents are concerned about. Because it's newer. It's a newer thing to be seeing this in our schools. And a lot of parents believe that it is just too early to be doing that in the earlier grades. We're already doing it in middle school and high school. It's already there. Okay, and you don't see the parents that are upset about that. I'm sure there's some, but when you bring it into the little kids, that's where the parents are like, whoa, whoa, how do you know that my kid is ready, right? Okay, so that's where we see a lot of that pushback. 2021, the MSDE approved that comprehensive health framework. So that framework is there. Our school and FCPS in March of 2021 adopted it. And this fall is supposed to be implementing it in elementary school. Now, what Tom covered is the fact that from 2021 until now, very little has been approved by our Family Life Advisory Committee for the elementary level. Very little. They do a lot of the curriculum writing over the summer. They did a lot of work this year, throughout the year, but they did not make any real decisions, and there hasn't been a lot of like evolution of the curriculum. Haven't seen it. So a lot of parents are concerned and have no idea what's going to be taught this year. We keep getting told, don't worry, we're not really teaching gender identity, but as Tom stated, how do you do that? How do you say you need to be kind to all genders if they don't know what you're talking about? You know, there has to be some sort of guidance, and there will be questions and answers. What do I need to push over?
Just enter or
Okay.
space.